medicine. But once the Rockefellers and the Carnegies took over, they had a great idea. They're going to put Abraham Fletcher in charge of this. By the way, he had never had any kind of education in health and medicine at all. He had run a boys' school that had gone bankrupt. So he was not a doctor, he was not educated in medicine at all, but he was the one in charge of evaluating every medical school in existence at that time in 1910. And they did. And he traveled with N.P. Coldwell, which was the head of the Council on Medical Education in the American Medical Association, and they evaluated every medical school in the United States. And the medical schools that were teaching drug-intensive medicine were the ones that received the high marks. And the medical schools that were teaching homeopathy, herbalism, chiropractic, naturopathy, anything natural, anything nature-based, anything nutrition-based, those medical schools received low grades. And then after this report was submitted to the Carnegie Foundation and then eventually to the U.S. Congress in 1910, it later became known as the Fletcher Report. After this report was submitted to them, Carnegie and Rockefeller showered over $550 million on the schools that received the highest grades, the highest evaluations. Now, in 1910 dollars, that was the equivalent of today, due to the devaluation of the dollar, about $20 billion that the medical schools received that were teaching drug-intensive medicine. In the end, it's not hard to understand why the schools that received the funding were the ones that lasted, right? Money talks. They were able to build big fancy facilities, they had all the equipment, they had the important professors, and if you didn't get a degree from a Fletcher-approved medical school in the end, you could not become a medical doctor. Now this is kind of interesting that Rockefeller was one of the ones that funded this. This is one of the reasons why everyone in here that's a doctor of chiropractic, raise your hand, DCs. Okay, we got a huge amount, half the room is DCs. Did you know that this is the reason that people look at you as quacks? Do you know that's why most chiropractors are looked at as quacks still today? I don't believe that. I think that the chiropractic is essential in good health. But most medical doctors will look at chiropractors and say they're a bunch of quacks. Why? Because of the Fletcher Report of 1910 that labeled homeopaths and naturopaths and herbalists and chiropractors as quacks. As a matter of fact, after this report was released in 1913, the American Medical Association developed their own internal department, which they called the propaganda department, and its only purpose was to attack chiropractors and herbalists and naturopaths and homeopaths and make people believe that they were quacks. Why did all this happen? Rockefeller was a businessman, right? That's the way we say it in Texas, business. He was a businessman. And he owned oil companies and chemical companies, which later became pharmaceutical companies. And his goal was to monopolize the chemical pharmaceutical industry. And with the Fletcher Report of 1910, he did that. And that's why the homeopathic medical schools and the medical schools that taught naturopathy and chiropractic pretty much fell by the wayside. And I think the statistic is on here. By 1940, this is 30 years after the Fletcher Report, 1,500 chiropractors were prosecuted and sent to jail for practicing quackery because of the Fletcher Report. Now, if you understand what I just told you, if you want this again, email me. I'll be glad to send you the PowerPoint. I know we're going fast, but if you want these slides, I'll be glad to share them with you. You know more about the history of modern medicine than 99% of the medical doctors that are out there that don't know diddly squat about nutrition. And the reason they don't know anything about nutrition is because the medical schools stopped teaching it back in 1910. Those that did, they fell by the wayside. The ones today, I got a good buddy down in Seguin, Texas. Dr. Urban Sani is probably one of my best friends. He went through a decade of medical school, and I asked him on this recent Quest for the Cures, how much education did you get in medical school about nutrition? And he said, pretty much none. So how can you be a medical doctor, go through a decade of education, and never learn about the impact that nutrition has on your health? This is why. It's all about the money. So what was President Obama talking about in 2010? He says, we fought for and we won historic reforms to our healthcare system, a victory 100 years in the making. This was in 2010 at the passage of the Affordable Care Act, which is the biggest oxymoron in history because it's not affordable and you get no care. He was talking about the Fletcher Report. Now, he didn't know this. I mean, the speechwriters write the speeches. The presidents don't. They just read. They read teleprompters. And not just him, Bush did too. The presidents just run up picking on Obama. They just read their speeches. But the speech writer, he knew what that meant. He's talking about the Flexion Report of 1910. One more quick quiz. What's the leading cause of death in the United States? We got cancer on the left and we got heart attack there on the right. So which one? It's a trick question because I already gave you the answer earlier, right? Neither. Trust me, I'm a doctor. Iatrogenocide is a term that was not in the dictionary 50 years ago. Iatrogenocide means death by doctor or death by medicine. Dr. Gary Null, Carolyn Dean, and about 6 other medical doctors, about 10 years ago, I think it was 2004, was published a report that was called Death by Medicine. They showed that 783,000 plus people per year die as a result of medical-induced errors. Hospital infections, bed sores, unnecessary surgeries. Look at the top one there, 106,000 due to non-error negative effects of drugs. What does that mean? Non-error negative effects of drugs. It means they are properly prescribed. 106,000 people die each year. This is on the FDA's website too. You can go to fda.gov and they admit 100,000 plus people each year die from properly prescribed prescription drugs. Can you imagine how fast the FDA SWAT teams would be on you if you were a raw milk seller in Dallas, Texas, and somebody died from your raw milk? One person. They would SWAT team your clinic and shut you down faster than I can say I have genocide. They would. But 100,000+ people die each year from prescription drugs that are properly prescribed and nobody bats an eye. They even post it on their website. I got 6 minutes. The American Cancer Society is a charity that we're going to hear a lot about this next month. October is the Run for the Cures month, right? Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Those people that are on the ground level running for the cures are good people. They want to find a cure. They've been snookered. The ACS is a charity that takes in almost $2 billion a year. Almost $1 billion of it is spent. And of that $1 billion a year, I'm a CPA, by the way. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not a chiropractor. I'm not anything in the health realm other than a researcher. But I'm a CPA and I've got a master's in taxation. And one of the things I can do is I can read numbers. So I pulled down their website, from the ACS website, pulled down their 2012 financial statements, because they're a nonprofit, so you can pull them down. Of the $1 billion that were spent that year, like 100 and something, 160,000, say here, yeah, 148 million. I'm sorry, 148 million was spent on research. The other 84% of that $1 billion was spent on salaries, fundraising, travel, administrative overhead, and so forth. So even the people that think that there's going to be a cure that comes from the ACS, which by the way it never will, because in the minutes of the ACS are written that if there is ever a cure for cancer that's found, that the American Cancer Society will immediately disband. So what kind of incentive is it for their CEO, who makes $2.3 million per year in salary and benefit package, to find a cure? You think it'll ever come from there? No, because they're treating symptoms. They're not treating the cancer, because as Dr. Majors mentioned, the cancer is something that has gone wrong in the body. Cancer is your body signaling to you, something's wrong, fix it. The tumor is a message to you, something's wrong, fix it. I got to read this. We've got 4.5 minutes left. This is a great quote by Dr. Philip Benzel. He was a medical doctor, but I'm going to read it to you. I don't know if you can read it from the back here. He says, when a patient is found to have a tumor, the only thing the doctor discusses with that patient is what he intends to do about the tumor. If a patient with a tumor is receiving radiation or chemo, the only question that is asked is, how is the tumor doing? No one ever asks how the patient is doing. In my medical training, I remember well seeing patients who were getting radiation and or chemo. The tumor would get smaller and smaller, but the patient would get sicker and sicker. At autopsy, we would hear, isn't that marvelous? The tumor is gone. Yes, but so is the patient. How many millions of times are we going to have to realize that we're treating the wrong thing? Tumor's not the problem. Tumor's a symptom of something that's gone wrong in the body that needs to be fixed. If your car has a check engine light come on, how many of you are going to take a hammer and smash it? Right? By the chuckles, I can tell that nobody would. That's idiocy, right? Because everyone out here, even me, I'm not a mechanic, but everyone out here, even myself included, knows that if you see a check engine light come on in your car, that if you take a hammer and smash it, you didn't fix the problem, did you? Right? You may not be aware the problem's there anymore, but you didn't fix it. That's what we do with tumors. When we remove tumors, but we don't fix the underlying issues with the body's imbalances, the cancer's still there. You just smash the symptom with a hammer. or you just cut out the symptom with a knife, but the cancer's still there. Okay, here's several things just real quickly that I want to cover. We got like 3 minutes left. GMOs, right? GMOs are not harmless. They do cause cancer. The only long-term study that's ever been done on genetically modified organisms. If there's one thing you can change in your diet, one thing you can eliminate, please eliminate GMOs. I'm sure that most of you have, but share this with others, because this not only threatens people with their health from cancer, but this threatens the next generation from sterility. Because the studies that have come out have shown that it not only causes cancer, not only causes premature death, but causes sterility. And I want my children to have children. I want to be a granddad one day. So avoid GMOs at all costs. You've probably heard that the Seralini study, that was a study that was done in France, that was the only long-term study. You've heard that was bumped, right? You've probably read articles that says the Seralini study was no good. Well, let me tell you, the only difference between the Seralini study and the study that Monsanto did, wait, did I say Monsanto? Monsanto. The only difference between that is the fact that the Seralini study went for 2 years. In Monsanto studies, they were self-directed studies, that's all the FDA requires, is if you're producing GMOs, you have to submit a study that you did yourself to the FDA, and they rubber stamped and said, okay, well, there's a study, and we can approve the food. So, before this study from Seralini, the only studies that had ever been done on GMOs were from Monsanto themselves. Monsanto always pulled the plug on the studies in 90 days. Seralini carried out the studies in 2 years. The rats started getting cancer in about 150 days and continued until 50 to 80% of them died prematurely and the rest of them had cancer. Okay, they do cause cancer. Monsanto attacked it, so the FDA said the study was no good because they used the wrong strain of rats. And they didn't use enough rats. Well, guess what, FDA and Monsanto? They used the same strain of rats that Monsanto did, Sprague Dawley rats. They used the same number of rats in every study, 10. The only difference was that they carried it out long enough to see the implications of the GMO. Monsanto pulled the plug at 90 days. You think they knew that was going to happen? You think that's why they pulled the plug at 90 days? Absolutely. GMO is in everything. Okay, you got soy, you got cotton, you got corn, you got canola, you've got papaya now, even alfalfa. Now they're looking at Kentucky bluegrass. They're trying to genetically modify the grass that the cows eat. So now if you get grass-fed cows that eat GMO grass, you're still in danger. They're destroying the food supply. Stay away from GMOs. Okay, I got like a minute left. Hemp. Okay, I don't even have time to go into this, but it's not just for smoking, folks. Okay, hemp is it's a medicinal superfood. It treats cancer more effectively than almost any natural substance that I've ever studied. All of the founding fathers grew hemp. The benefits are immense, but I don't have time to go into it. Anybody that emails me, I'll send you my slide presentation here. Okay, 783,000 people die a year from legally prescribed prescription drugs. 250,000 people die from all of the other non-prescription drugs, the illegal drugs. But they're still bad for you, right? I mean, all the drugs are bad for you. The cocaine and the heroin, they're still bad, but they're not over the counter. You got to get that from a drug dealer. Only 250,000 people die from that each year. Nobody's ever died from hemp. All right, let's go. I got 2 seconds, so I got to wrap it up. Gosh. Okay, let me take 30 seconds here. Okay. There is a place, and you don't have to get THC high hemp. THC is the cannabinoid that makes you high. You can get CBD hemp. You can get CBD. Cannabidiol is in the hemp oil, and it will not make you high. You can buy it anywhere in the United States now. Talk to me later, I'll tell you where. Well, it may be on here, let's see. Is it on there? Yeah, Hemp Meds PX, great website to get it. Okay, I'm wrapping up. Detox, you got a detox. You don't have to exercise either. This is the only disagreement I have with you guys. You're up here jumping around and doing push-ups. You do not have to exercise to get a six-pack. All you got to do is find your fitness. Okay? Coming up in October, this picture is me and Dr. Majors. I interviewed him for the Quest for the Cures back in May. It's a documentary mini-series on how to treat cancer naturally. We got another one coming up in October. Please go to thetruthaboutcancer.com and you can sign up to watch it for free in October. And remember, cancer does not have to be a death sentence. There's always hope. And if your oncologist tells you that you're dead in 3 months or 6 months, if you don't do this or that, if they give you a death sentence, don't believe them. They don't know what they're talking about. God bless you all.